Friday, we delve into the heart of the digital wilderness, a realm where the ceaseless flow of information forges an ecosystem as dynamic and unpredictable as the natural world itself. It's the 29th of March, a day marked by the convergence of forces, both formidable and enlightened, in our special installment, Purple March Madness. We are honored to welcome Anton Ovrutsky, a veritable sage in the intricate dance of cybersecurity. With the wisdom of a seasoned traveler and the insight of a master strategist, Anton will lead us through the uncharted territories of Kubernetes Purple Teaming and the detailed mapping of cyber threats with VECTR, a tool as vital to our journey as a compass to an explorer. Join us on Atomics on a Friday, where the intricate tapestry of cybersecurity is unraveled, one episode at a time, offering not just knowledge, but a transformative perspective on the collaborative efforts that shield our digital realm. In today's episode of Atomics on a Friday, we delve into the heart of the digital wilderness.
That was the best one yet. You're muted, Mike. Your
Thanks.
buttons are hard.
Yes, that one was really good. That was a great intro. That sets the stage, sets the tone.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Make sure we give him a bonus at year-end review.
Yes, exactly. I know. Intern slash David, and everybody's rocking it.
Intern's gonna get extra Starbucks for a week.
Yeah, man. So happy Friday. I'm excited. Today's like, it feels like the end of Purple March Madness, but it's actually not, because the brackets are still going.
Well, we got, we're in what, quarterfinals right now? No.
Final four.
Final four. I am ready to roll.
I know.
It's some huge upsets on the last round. I can't wait to dive into the stats at the end.
Yeah, definitely. If I have the link, I'll drop the link in chat. Give people a minute to vote while we're live here today. Yeah, here's the link, unless you already did it.
I did not.
There it is. All right, so if you want to vote, get your C2 madness. We're down to the final four, which is wild. There was some massive upsets and some weird ones that made it to the quarterfinals, but now we're down to the final four. So
yeah, still not sure how some of them moved on from round one, to be honest, but I still have to.
Yes,
we'll have to pay somebody to actually seed the next one we do, which will be on EDR, so that'll be a good one.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Can't wait for that one.
Slides over here. Cool. Yeah, so link that. What is Purple Madness? Well, if you're like 5 episodes deep now and you don't know what Purple Madness is, well, Purple Madness is a thing that we do every year now, this is our second time. So we bring in different perspectives of different people from different backgrounds to talk about different things like CTI, purple teaming, and threat research, detection, engineering. And we're on our last episode. So you are here on the final one, watching it either live or recorded. Today, we have a very, very awesome special guest and getting into a topic that I'm pretty sure detection engineers and whatnot want to know more about. I'll bring in our
kind of like our first big foray into this kind of technology. So very exciting.
Yeah. Me bring Anton in. Anton, thank you again.
you guys. Hello, happy to be here.
Thanks. Yeah. So, yeah, I think this is definitely Kubernetes is definitely a tricky one. I'm excited because I don't know enough about it, and I'm excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, that makes two of us. So I'm learning more about it every day, but I've definitely dove in enough to get the fingers and toes wet a little bit. But there's still so much to learn. It's such like a deep well, and every like org that I see uses it a different way in a different like configuration and everything. So it's really interesting. So yeah, happy to dive into it a bit.
Excellent. Yeah, it'll be fun. I was trying to capture something from our intro today, but I can't. Oh, yes, with the wisdom of a seasoned traveler. So, and the sage. It's awesome.
That intro was amazing. You even got my last name pronounced correctly, which is like
So
really impressive.
cool.
I'll just see if it'll get mine correct.
Yeah, it like nailed it like 100%. That's crazy.
That's top tier.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think we need major introductions today because there is a lot to cover. Which again, thank you for taking the time, Anton, to join us and to take us through this journey through the, what do they call it? To the digital wilderness. So we'll a realm of ceaseless flow of information. But yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Keep, we'll just tell us how you want us to click the slides.
Sure.
And we're here to be enlightened.
Yeah, I guess like this is probably a good place to start with like what the heck is Kubernetes to begin with. I think
that was my first question earlier. I was like, I don't even know what Kubernetes is, honestly. So,
yeah. This is the that quote there at the top of the slide is what I got from the documentation, and that's what I kind of started with when I was trying to learn this topic, and it never really clicked for me until I read the KCNA book, just like studying for my KCNA cert because I wanted to like just get like the beginners cert just to get familiar with it, and what really helped me is the explanation of not just like what the technology is, like not what Kubernetes is, but how you actually use it. So that's why I put the flow there. So overall, it's a container orchestration framework, right? So you have a developer that writes some kind of app, and that app gets published or packaged as a container. That container gets uploaded to a container registry, so your AWS, whatever they call it, or your Docker container registry, whatever. And then you have the server downloading the image, running the image, and then Kubernetes is the thing that orchestrates that image. So if you wanted to ensure that you have, like 2 instances of a certain app running in a certain region, or you wanted to like load balance that app, like advanced networking, that kind of stuff, that's what Kubernetes does, and it all does that via config files. So there's no, like GUI for this. I mean, there probably is tools that do Kubernetes GUI, but the actual definitions are all YAML. So you deploy your like app infrastructure in a declarative YAML format that you just apply to your Kubernetes cluster. And the Kubernetes cluster itself could live either on a VM with something like Minikube, and that's what I'm going to be using for all the demos today, or it could live in the cloud, like your AKS for Azure or EKS for AWS or GKE for Google. There's probably a couple more out there that write them, but those are the big ones.
Very easy names to understand.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I don't even have notes for this. That came straight from my brain. It's just surprising. Thank you, brain. So yeah, like generally for virtualization, I know people know like hypervisors, right? We all know that. So Kubernetes is just like another layer of abstraction for the hypervisor. So you, like the hypervisors that are like the Hyper-Vs, they take like the physical hardware and virtualize it, and then the container virtualization takes the VM, containerizes it, and then Kubernetes orchestrates that container. So the stuff in the slide is like the features of Kubernetes, like observed state versus desired state. So if you have like a state that's set in your config in your YAML files, and the configuration drifts from that somehow, Kubernetes will heal itself and it does like resiliency, so you can have different regions running different instances, and if your config says I need 2 instances running and then one dies, it'll bring the other one up automatically. That kind of stuff. It gets obviously like way more advanced than that, but that's the TLDR kind of.
Yeah, I was
explanation.
kind of curious about that part because it in a way it sounds a little terraformy.
Yeah.
So do like the systems just kind of like check in more or less, and then Kubernetes itself listens for like a heartbeat? Like if something, how would it know if something's dead?
That's all configured in your YAML files. There's like a health endpoint there, so you can do different types of,
Neat.
like return a certain status code for your app. If it gets like a 4000 or 404 or something like that, it knows that it's unhealthy. And yeah, I guess it is kind of like Terraform, but with Terraform, I guess you're only deploying that infrastructure,
Yeah,
like kind of like once.
it's not like managed.
Yeah. Whereas this, you're just deploying it, and it stays that way. So yeah, I got this graphic from Altissan. I don't even know how to pronounce their
Oh, Atlassian.
Atlassian. Yeah, there
Yes,
you go. It's just a good graphic. Like I
very
see a
very
lot
well
of-
known for Confluence and Jira.
Yeah, Confluence, Jira. Everyone, I love Jira.
You might be the only one.
I'm joking.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like Jira. This is just a graphic I found that I think most of the Kubernetes graphics that I've seen do like this really high level architecture of like the Kubernetes architecture itself, like how the API works, how the container runtime works, and all that. But I like this graphic because it shows the higher level above that, like the virtualization part of it, and I think that's what maybe folks who are new to Kubernetes kind of struggle understanding, and I myself struggle with this too, because I had the same questions, right? Like, what the heck does it do? Like, why would I want this? Like, why is there so much hype around it? And it wasn't until I found stuff like this that talked about like the different virtualization steps and why you would want this kind of stuff, then it started clicking a little bit. But yeah, obviously there's still way more to dig into for Kubernetes.
Yeah,
that's what this
I'm
graphic is.
I'm like at the part with Google GCP where I push the container to the registry, and that's where I'm at. I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that just means like you built it, like you can build a container locally, like let's say Atomic Red Team is a great example of this. You can just put Atomic Red Team into a container that it'll just install PowerShell for you and install Atomic Red Team, and then that container goes to a registry, and then you could run that container with just Docker, or you can run it with Kubernetes, and in your YAML file you provide creds for that container registry, and then you tell it I want 2 copies of this, or I want 3 copies of this, or I want 1 pod running here and 1 pod running over there, kind of thing. You can map configs, drive paths, all that good stuff. So high level, that's how the Kubernetes
It's pretty
reason
cool
for being is. Yeah.
So I presume this is definitely useful in the cases of like SaaS companies thinking of like the Netflix or the Spotify's, where you have a whole bunch of potential containers running that provide various services and they manage them, right? So all of a sudden the US is spiking, new TV show drops in the US, like they use Kubernetes to kind of manage it. Whereas maybe in Australia, the thing is low, so the Kubernetes can help manage that side of it. So you can have like the differences, even though the services themselves are still the same, you can split them based on like geographic.
Yeah, and you can like scale up or down, and there's like different concepts of scaling in Kubernetes, like horizontal and vertical. So you could scale it in a way that adds more resources to the pod, to the app that's running, or you could run kind of like more instances of that pod. So if you're running like like a shopping cart or something like that, and people are buying your stuff, and you're like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, you can spin up, I need additional pods in these regions, and you can do that with just a YAML file. There's no you don't need to spin up VMs or anything. So that's what it abstracts all that from you.
So I'm not like manually running the command to deploy a new Docker container. Like it's just going to handle it. I set my thresholds or my variances, and it's just going to do it whenever that criteria is met.
Yeah, and the hypervisor, although there's a bunch of layers of abstraction here, where the hypervisor is running typically on your Amazons or your Azures or something like that, right? So all that kind of like architecture and host level stuff is all kind of taken care for you. So you just have to worry about like writing your YAML files properly and deploying all that stuff. You don't manage any hardware resources or anything like that.
So I'm not just building racks of R710s in my basement,
Yes, yeah.
managing this.
Exactly, yeah. Although it's interesting because hopefully we'll see like in the demos that there's like 2 layers of telemetry with Kubernetes, right? There's the usage of like kubectl, where you're looking at what commands are being issued to the control plane of Kubernetes, and then there's the actual Kubernetes telemetry itself from the control plane saying like, I'm spinning up a pod. So you have your kubectl, apply -f your YAML file on the host layer, and then you have your Kubernetes cloud telemetry as well. So that part of it was interesting for me because that was like when I was trying to learn, I was like, where do I get the logs? Like, right, like a log nerd like myself, that was my first question. Like, where do I log this kind of stuff? And a lot of us detection folks who are used to, like process creation events and like audit D and Linux and stuff, that stuff is still very much applicable for Kubernetes. There's just another kind of layer of telemetry involved, which is pretty interesting.
So to kind of like help me understand it, so you're saying like the kubectl side is more like these are the commands that were issued.
Yeah.
But the other one is like translating, okay, I said go do this, but after reading the YAML, now it's okay, I'm going to spin up 10 instances or modify this. That's like the end state of what's going to happen. So you kind of get to match the two of like, here's a command that was run, but it translated to this activity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
And the other interesting part is that the kubectl itself is just a wrapper for APIs, right? So the kubelet layer, like the thing that listens for API commands, like you can run with, you just send curl commands to it. It'll be like a long curl command because of all the like headers and stuff you need to put in there, but you can do that, right? So kubectl is just like a wrapper for under the hood. All it's doing is just sending API requests to the Kubernetes server, telling it what to do. And that's where you get that two layers of telemetry. You get the host layer where you're actually running the kubectl commands, and obviously you don't get to see what's in the YAML file, but linking that to the stuff that's happening at the Kubernetes layer, like at the actual host layer, the kubelet layer, that is interesting, right? Because like the connection between the two is a little bit loose, I haven't seen too much like detection content on that kind of thing, like a correlation between those two aspects. So that's just an interesting kind of topic to dig into.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very excited to dig in some more. Let's keep rolling. This is
sounds good. Yeah. I don't even know what the next slide is, to be honest with you. Good. Okay. Yeah. So learning about Kubernetes is pretty important. I think this is when I first started learning about Kubernetes, I went to like, my brain goes right to InfoSec resources, and a lot of the stuff out there for like Kubernetes security is really like Linuxy, like Linux kernel security, like SE Linux, that kind of stuff. So it's really went over my head, and I had to turn to like non-InfoSec sources to learn about Kubernetes, and then kind of like put my kind of like detection hat on and extract what I could from learning about Kubernetes and applying it to like detection stuff. So the KCNA book here by Nigel Poulton was really, really good. It's just very accessible. Even if you know nothing about like containerization or cloud or services or anything like that, you'll understand it. Just because the way he like outlines the stuff, just in plain English, there's no like tech magic happening in that book. Just a really, really great resource. And then Andrew Brown has a whole whack of, I don't even know how this guy does his videos for free. They're like 7 hours long on YouTube, and like really well done, and just completely for free. And I think he actually lives in Ontario too. So shout out to Andrew for providing all that stuff for free. And it's not just Kubernetes. Like his YouTube video has like Terraform stuff, AWS stuff. Just a really, really great resource. And there's tons of like Kubernetes videos. There's a Kubernetes Slack channel too. I think that one's official, like run by the Cloud Native Foundation. And the folks there were really, really helpful when I was trying to study for my KCNA and stuff like that. And then there's just general like tools and blogs that I'll hopefully demo in a little bit as well.
Awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of resources, more than I kind of expected. But
yeah, you just have to like go outside. I know like in InfoSec, right, we all live in like this kind of like InfoSec bubble where we're all looking at like each other's sources and looking at that. And it was really fun actually to go outside of that kind of like InfoSec paradigm and look at, you know, what other folks are writing about Kubernetes. So yeah, it's just that book is really what kind of you know, opened the dam for me, so to speak. That's when things started actually clicking, when I could actually read like I said at the start, like the just looking at like the Kubernetes diagram, you know, I was like, okay, I don't get it. Like, what does etcd do? What's a kubelet? Like, I like, how do these pieces fit together? I don't understand. Like, how does a human actually use this? Like, what's the actual flow? And that's what that book did a really good job of highlighting, like how developers actually like write the apps and deploy the apps and how it's used like in a practical sense. So that really helped out a ton.
So would you say humans don't use Kubernetes? Like that's the neat part.
I think they do. I know, like, you know, like Sumo's a pretty heavy Kubernetes shop, and our engineers use Kubernetes all the time. And I know, like, it's popular technology. So yeah, humans, I think they do use it. It's probably very hard to understand if you're, as a human, if you're trying to learn about it and you're starting to read about it in that like API kind of layer, and you're trying to see how Kubernetes works first without really understanding like what it's used for, then that's what'll get you confused. I think that's the kind of like non-humanistic way to go about learning it, and that's how I tried at first, right? Just like, I want to dig into like the technical parts. I need to understand how this all works and all that, and that is like banging my head against the wall. Nothing made sense until I actually looked at the actual like how it's used. That's what really clicked in for me.
That makes sense, especially thinking about it from like, you know, the book itself is more of the administration or understanding like how you're going to use it versus like the security. I think sometimes that's the easy thing to fall into, especially being in more of the InfoSec side of things. You think, tell me the security aspect versus how does this actually work in the understanding, or how are people going to use it? Exactly. I think that approach sometimes helps to simplify it and bring it down to like, okay, the basics, this is what makes sense. And then you apply the more security aspect of it, because you can have a better grasp of that. Like sometimes it gets a little lost. At least it's how I approach it sometimes. And I'm like, I got to start back at zero and go back.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And even if you look at like the Kubernetes like matrix for MITRE ATT&CK, like it's pretty sparse, like especially compared to like the enterprise one. You know, there's just not as much data in there, not as many techniques in there. And if you look at the like public reporting for Kubernetes, you know, that gets deployed, like they compromise the cluster and they deploy a coin miner. I know there's probably other, you know, I'm sure that there's other, you know, more like interesting attacks happening with Kubernetes clusters, but that's all I've seen from public reporting anyway. But that's why approaching Kubernetes from like a security first kind of approach. I don't know. Maybe everyone learns differently, right? But for me, it didn't click that way until I kind of flipped it around and tried to look at the like what it's used for in a practical sense.
Makes sense. Let's keep going. I'm excited. This is fascinating.
Awesome.
It's actually helped me out. Helped definitely clarify a lot more. Even the first
awesome
15 minutes we've been talking about it.
Oh, right on. Hopefully the demos help even more.
Ooh,
so yeah,
now we're into the meat of it.
Yeah, the purple teaming stuff. So yeah, I have a blog on the Sumo Logic blog there for how to build a Kubernetes home lab. And once we get to the demo part, I'll share my screen and kind of walk through that blog a little bit. But it walks you through how to set up Minikube. And Minikube is like your little local Kubernetes cluster. Think of it that way. If you don't want to sign up for a cloud provider, it can get expensive. I think I ran AKS for this demo, and it's like, I think it's already like 20 or 30 bucks a day or something like that. And it's like very verbose. The logs coming out of that sucker it wants you to know about every little thing it's doing, right? So just be careful if you're playing with this stuff. Like, start with Minikube. That would be my recommendation. It's like free to use, free to install. I think you only need about like 8 gigs of RAM to get it running. So that blog walks you through like how to set it up, how to run certain, just getting started TTPs. We're not like poning the cluster or anything like that. We're just looking at basic, like what happens when you deploy a pod, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that blog is out there free to use. And then this blog from Falco, I actually saw this, I think a week or so ago before this talk. I don't know why I didn't get more attention. It's really cool. They built Atomic Red Team into a pod. So not an Atomic Red Team container, but you can actually deploy Atomic Red Team as like a Kubernetes pod, and it has PowerShell in it. And then it has all the Atomic Red Team tests. So I'll demo that as well. Really cool. QPound is like almost like Bloodhound, but for Kubernetes. So the Datadog team really does a great job of publishing tons and tons of really cool research on Kubernetes and AWS too. So if you're interested in like AWS security, I think one of the researchers, probably mispronouncing his name, Nick Frichette, has Hacking the Cloud. I believe that's the site, which is like a catalog of like cloud hacking type techniques, and there's some stuff for Kubernetes in there. And then Kubernetes Goat is a really cool project. It's like a vulnerable by design Kubernetes deployment that has a whole bunch of apps and different things. And what I really enjoyed about Kubernetes Goat is it helps you understand like the different layers of telemetry involved, right? So if you have like a web server running in a pod, you have like the host layer that shows you, okay, I deployed this web server pod. And then you have the Kubernetes layer that tells you, okay, I'm deploying this pod. And then you have like the actual web server logs themselves. So like understanding how those layers of telemetry like work and what you need to get like the full visibility around Kubernetes, that's the most interesting part for me about Kubernetes Goat. I know most people will gravitate to like the hacking part of it, and that's fun too. But just understanding like what I could actually see and what I can't see for Kubernetes deployments, that I just love that project. That's really cool, and it just comes in. You can just deploy it with Kubernetes, and there's like a lot of write-ups for it and everything. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of tooling for Kubernetes out there for Purple Teaming, and I'll get into some of these in the demos.
That is definitely more than I expected as far as like the cloud hacking the cloud site, and yeah, Kubernetes Goat, KubeHound, like, yeah. I also didn't realize too, the Falco like piece, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's back in December, but
yeah,
I was just like skimming it. I was like, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. If you think about what you can do with like Atomic Red Team in a pod, right? If you want to automate this kind of stuff, or if you want like to execute atomic tests from different regions kind of thing, or from different cloud providers, I think there's a lot of like unexplored potential here, which is really really super cool. Someone should actually make a pod that has VECTR in it as well, and Atomic Red Team, so it's all in one. Maybe that could be like a cool project for someone. But yeah, I'm surprised they didn't get more traction. And Falco itself is actually pretty interesting. I don't have it in my demos today, but it's more of like I don't know how to phrase it, like a runtime protection. So it's like the EDR for Kubernetes almost. Someone who's like way more versed in Kubernetes is probably going to get angry at me for saying that, but in my brain, that's kind of the analogy that I have in my head. So it'll tell you like when you do things like exec into a pod, Falco will flag that as well. It has rules for that kind of stuff, and it runs at the actual like API layer, at the Kubernetes layer. So another interesting tool.
That's awesome. So is it is it like an intercept of like adversary in the middle of watching the API call, or is it like reading the logs on like the secondary step of that?
I think it's the former. Like it's a kernel driver, if I'm not mistaken, that gets installed on the system. That's why my head links it to an EDR, because both have a driver installed. So that yeah, it's, I don't know if it's like sitting in the middle of the API or what it's doing, but I'm pretty sure what's it called? No, not BGP. What's that? eBPF is probably involved in there somewhere, and there is a driver that gets loaded. So yeah, I think it just kind of sits in the middle of like maybe not the API itself, but there's got to be some hardcore computer science Linuxy explanation for this that I'm not giving, but in my analogy, it's like a Windows EDR, but for your Kubernetes. Yeah,
makes sense to me. Like in my head, I'm like, it's I get it.
yeah. I think I actually had an example of Falco in one of my older LaRes blogs on Kubernetes. I don't know if I put it in this slide, but it's out there. But yeah, I think it's free to use. So you can just install it on your Minikube cluster if you want to play around with it.
Awesome.
So yeah, obviously the shameless plug for my course. There you go. If you want to learn more about Kubernetes, the Constructing Defense course has, I think I'm up to 6 modules for Kubernetes, and we start super slow. It's all like a step-by-step, and there's videos for how to get your Minikube cluster set up, how to get telemetry into your SIM, and we go through a couple of like different execution steps for Kubernetes, and there's a coupon code for Happy Friday, so you get 15% off. And I think the latest lesson I have for Kubernetes is one of my favorites. It's like we poison the pod. So we take the YAML file, and instead of just deploying a regular Ubuntu file, we download like a Mythic payload and run it. So we get a callback from like inside the pod. So it's a little cheeky, fun lesson. But I think it does a good job of illustrating like the different layers and how you could actually like attack a Kubernetes like cluster, because there's just so many avenues, right? You can like compromise a host and run kubectl commands as that user. You could like edit the YAML files to download your own payload or a miner. If the cluster itself doesn't have authentication, you could like, deploy your own pod. And I don't know, it's again, like with Kubernetes, at least from the public reporting that I see, it's all coin miners. But hopefully, maybe not hopefully, that's the wrong verbiage.
I was gonna say,
it'd be nice to read about some more interesting like Kubernetes attacks and like CVEs and stuff, but that's a little bit beyond like my knowledge at this point.
I was just thinking, like, is there any EDR products that, I mean, I guess if Falco may, I assume there's other EDR tools that can sit on containers.
Yeah, there's a bunch of, I forget what the actual product category is called, but generally I think it falls into
cloud
that,
workload protection.
Yeah, like a CNAP type thing that tells you like, hey, you have a pod eating up 100% CPU, or you have like unauthorized access to something going on, that kind of stuff. I think it's like the Wiz, Laceworks. That kind of stuff. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I don't know if CWP is the right term anymore. They keep rebranding it, and I just keep losing it.
Yeah. Maybe one day you guys should have like a product person or like one of those like SaaS product analyst type folks on here. That'd be really interesting.
Classic
InfoSec. Those modules are live in the course now?
Yes, yeah. All those.
I know what I'm doing this weekend.
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Yeah. I know the course goes in like so many directions, right? Where you're like, AD, no Linux, no Kubernetes. But I
think it makes sense, because you think about like everything you go into a traditional SOC role now, like it's not just Windows, it's anything and everything. So it's definitely good to get some variance, especially because you never know what you're going to come across in different roles. So it's great.
Yeah, and I don't want to, say you're going to be like a Kubernetes security expert, when you take the course. No, but you'll become familiar with like, I think the most important part is just understanding like where the telemetry comes from and what it is that you're looking at. I think that's the part, like, because like people are smart, right? They just need that little like push to get to the right area, and then once they have a good like orientation of where they're at and what they're looking at, then you can start to because every environment's different, right? Then you can start to actually like baseline, see what's normal, and then the abnormal stuff will stick out a little bit more. But that first little jump of understanding, like, how do I even get this lab set up? Where does the telemetry go? There's no like like the way that you get telemetry from a Kubernetes cluster, at least in Minikube, you have to install like a Helm chart that puts little pods in your deployment that does the log collection for you. So all that is a little bit like, for someone who's brand new at this, it's just a lot to untangle. But once you get some instructions that get you at least part of the way there, you have a much better grasp of what's happening.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's cool.
Oh, too far.
You're already there.
There
Too
it
far.
is.
You're already in.
So yeah,
Demos.
Yeah. So yeah, I have a couple. I think like 5 demos, and I know it sounds like a lot, but they'll be super quick and basic. So we'll just go through. we'll go through like the first one is just like deploying a pod, right? No security, no hacking going on here. We're just like, show me what it looks like when I deploy a pod. And then the next step is actually like getting a shell into a pod. So there's a way, like if you deploy like a new Ubuntu pod, for example, you can actually get a shell into it. It's not SSH. I don't know. Actually, I don't even know what it uses under the hood, but you can get a shell into it. And then Kubernetes enumeration, just generally like, what would it look like if a threat actor landed on a host that was running a Kubernetes cluster? Like what would they enumerate? And then the unauthorized API access to AKS is just we'll run a curl command to the AKS cluster and just get a 401 unauthorized. And then the atomic red team is the actual pod. And with the atomic red team pod too, I don't know, a lot of people don't use the attire logger module for atomic red team. And I saw a video, I think it was Carrie Roberts who did that video, and you can actually take like an atomic red team test and have it output like a JSON and then upload that JSON to VECTR, and it'll give you like a full blown like debug log of it and everything. So I'll demo that as well.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
Created by the VECTR team. I think they provided the support to generate that in the invoke side of it.
Man, that VECTR
I remember
team,
correctly.
They're top tier dudes and ladies, I'm sure. Awesome product. Love VECTR.
Speaking of Mythic, your reference of poisoning the pod, Mythic is in the final 4. I just had to get that pitch in there. So don't forget to vote. As Anton's setting up the demo, don't forget to vote for your favorite C2s. Mythic is one of them.
It's quite tight so far in the race.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Like Mythic is like almost like an enterprise grade application with its documentation and support and features. It's pretty wild. Shout out to Cody.
We'll wrap up once at the end. We'll pull up the dashboard, get you behind the scenes of the bracket, and show the stats of all things, and talk about some upsets and the final 4 contestants.
All right, sir. I'm curious how this is going to look with Kubernetes. So
Excited.
All right, let's see. Share.
Falco. They have a sweet logo on that blog, by the way. If you click that link, I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know what I did with it. And Kubernetes Goat has a sweet logo too.
Yes, Falco offers real runtime detection powered by eBPF.
We're live. All right.
Sweet.
Put us in
We're in.
our shells.
So
Alt shells.
All right. So I guess the first demo is just the pod deployment. And yeah, sorry if I'm looking over here. That's where the actual like video is. All right. So I have Minikube running.
Is that just like an apt install Minikube?
Yeah.
Or is there like a big process? It's not a big deal. I was just curious.
Yeah, installing Minikube. So this is the blog for the Purple Team blog. So Minikube, you just have to install Docker first, and then after you install Docker, it's just like a curl.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The toughest part is installing Docker. That usually like you have to find the right. And actually, funny enough, in Mythic, it comes with like a really good install Docker bash script. that I use pretty much anytime I want to install Docker. I just go
That's
to
awesome.
the Mythic repo. Yeah, like, so just a little bonus. I know everyone focuses on the C2 part, but there's other parts of Mythic that are cool too. So yeah, this is, let me see. So I got Minikube running, and this is what the Ubuntu pod looks like. If anyone hasn't seen Bat, it's just a really good like a replacement for Cat in Linux.
I was gonna say it sounds cooler than Cat.
Yeah, right. And it does like syntax highlighting, so you can actually kind of like see. I don't know, my brain, if I look at like YAML or JSON without syntax highlighting, it just looks like spaghetti to me. I don't know. I can't understand it. So yeah, Bat, and this is what the pod looks like. So you can see all these like API versions, the kind. So the kind, there's like different Kubernetes like resources that you can deploy, like a deployment. You could deploy a pod, a config map, a secret value. So in this case, we're
with Bat in hand, could you deploy a cave? Sorry,
maybe
get it. It's okay.
Maybe, yeah.
We'll stick with the pod.
Yeah, only pods for this time. Yeah. So yeah, we're deploying. This is the metadata part of it, so you can give the pod whatever label you want, and then this is the part that specifies the containers and the image. So your question earlier, if you had like a container deployed to a container registry, in this case, I think by default it pulls from like the default Docker container registry, so there's no credentials. But if you were pulling from like a private one, you would add your creds somewhere, either your YAML file or some kind of config. So the way we deploy this, so this is just going to deploy like an Ubuntu container, right? So nothing crazy. So it's just kubectl apply -f and our Ubuntu pod, and then that's it. So pretty straightforward. There's no like crazy magic going on here, right? We're just deploying a pod. But the cool part is that you're deploying all this from just the YAML file, right? So now you have, for all intents and purposes, almost like a full-blown Ubuntu container, like running in your environment that you just deployed with like, one command. So you can kind of, even though this is a pretty simple example, you can already start to see the kind of power behind all this. And then if you just do kubectl get pods A, then you can see the pod is running. And then I have my atomic red team pod already running too, just because that one takes a little bit of time to spin up. And then all these other pods, this kube system, this is the kind of stuff that I don't know how to, like in Windows, when you start up Windows, there's like a couple system processes that start up. Same thing. So your etcd pod, your DNS, your actual API server, the controller or the scheduler or the proxy. So these are things that like manage the pods and get you access to the pods and all that good stuff. And then this stuff that's in my namespace here, this is the actual collection. So if you run the Helm chart for, in my case, I'm using Sumo, but I think Splunk has a Helm chart too, and a whole bunch of other sims probably have a Helm chart. And what that does is that it deploys little other containers that actually send the logs from the API server and things like that to your system. So yeah, we just deployed a pod. So yeah, we're Kubernetes experts now. But the kind of like logging part of it. So this is what it looks like on the host side. So I already have all the queries like preloaded, just so we're not waiting around. So this is what it looks like, right? So the telemetry I'm using here is Laurel for Linux. And this is the Git repo for it. So what Laurel will do is it'll take audit D logs in Linux and it'll stitch them together into a JSON blob so that it's like way easier to ingest and work with in the sim. So that's the logs that I'm looking at. And I think I have one. Yeah. So this is the log in JSON Crack. I love JSON Crack. Just a great visualization tool. So this is what it looks like, and you can see like it tells you the object. So this is what the log has to do with like what it's looking at. So you can see the reason here created, and the involved object is what will tell you what was actually created. and then you have the source. So this is the source of the log. In my case, it's Minikube is the host, and the kubelet is the API server, if you will. The kubelet's the thing that listens for the API requests that are sent via kubectl. So when I ran this kubectl command here, under the hood, it just sent a whole bunch of API requests to the cluster to tell it, hey, spin up this Ubuntu pod. So this is what the log looks like. It's a little bit messy. Like, you do have to do some kind of, parsing and stuff to get it to kind of like show you what you want. But this is just all the command lines from the kubectl binary. So here we're not like specifically looking for the host creation. We're just showing like all the different command lines for kubectl. And you could see here, this kubectl apply -f Ubuntu pod is actually me creating the pod. And then this is just me deleting, cleaning up my cluster before all this demo stuff. So this is like the host part of Kubernetes. And I think this part is familiar to most like detection folks, right? You're just looking at processes, whether you're looking at like Laurel telemetry, audit D telemetry, or maybe some Linux CDRs as well. It's all the same. The one thing that is important to call out here is that the kubectl like binary itself, the location of it may change depending on, what version of Linux you're running. And in some cases, I think it depends on what your Kubernetes administrators are doing, but they might not even use kubectl. It might be some other tool or something like that, but we're just starting out here with the basics. So that's what it looks like from the host layer. And then at the actual Kubernetes layer, so this is from the actual like kubelet layer, like the API layer. You can see the created objects here is Ubuntu, and it's telling you created container Ubuntu. So that's what when you think about the like whole container orchestration portion, under the hood, it's just creating containers, right? And then all these are just the Kubernetes Minikube cluster actually starting up, where it creates all the etcd, core DNS, all those like system pods that it creates when it starts up. And then this one is just me starting the Atomic Red Team container just a couple days ago when I was testing all this stuff to just make sure it all worked. But yeah, that's the kind of like super basic demo where you just create a pod and just look at the logs. That's how I like to start with all this kind of stuff. Just generally like the most basic. Just give me the least common denominator here, so I could work my way outwards.
Yeah, it's pretty slick. I didn't realize how verbose their logging is.
Yeah, it's nice. Very verbose. Yeah, and this is just I think if you're collecting all Kubernetes telemetry, like there's metrics too, and I think this is a pretty interesting topic. I know security folks and detection people don't really look at metrics too much, like IT metrics and stuff like that. But given the fact that like when most threat actors compromise a Kubernetes cluster, they're deploying a miner, I think looking at the metrics is probably important. And then the blog here, I don't have a demo of it, but in the blog, I do go over the metrics side of it to somewhere here. I think it's towards the bottom, where I actually deploy like a XSEMRig miner in it. And it here. So that's what that looks like, where you can see like, hey, this one pod out of your entire cluster is like just redlining with CPU usage. So yeah, I guess I don't know, the metrics part of it is I'd say pretty critical for Kubernetes telemetry. I know like at least I haven't seen this kind of thing where threat hunters will say like, oh, I'm hunting for abnormal like CPU usage on a box. You know what I mean? Maybe that's a thing. But I haven't really seen too much of it. But for Kubernetes, I think it should be a thing. So yeah.
Container life.
Yeah, container life. Yeah. So yeah, that's the first demo. Super basic. So now that we have our pod deployed, we could actually exec into it. So to get like a bash shell in it.
Oh.
And then this is what the command looks like. So we're just doing the kubectl exec standard in, and then this TTY flag, and then Ubuntu is the pod name, and then we're just running a bash prompt in that pod. And then when we do that, we see the prompt changed from, you know, my condef Linux vbox to this root Ubuntu box, and then you just do, you know, whatever commands you want to run here. So for all intents and purposes, like you're in the pod now, right? You're living in the pod. You're exec into the pod. So this is, you can pretend like you're on a regular Ubuntu host at this point. You know, apt-get whatever will work, no problem. So if we look at this from the host layer, the detection here is pretty standard, right? You're just matching on the command line. Some Kubernetes telemetry will tell you at the Kubernetes layer as well, but Minikube didn't seem to have it. But I know I've done this in, I think, Azure and AWS, and the actual API logs will have this exec TTY STD in them as well, but for some reason Minikube just didn't. But again, this is a good example of why, like, even though it's like a, you know, a cloud native technology and it lives in the cloud, for comprehensive coverage anyway, you're still looking at, you know, process creation events at the host layer, like, you know, we're all used to. So this is just a really simple search, just a regex match for this exec TTY or STD in. And then you can see the image is kubectl in here. Sorry, I'll blow this up a little bit. The image is kubectl, and then here's all our command lines. And then this one is just me looking at the Atomic Red Team pod earlier. So then that's, you know, I think this is a MITRE technique on the MITRE, man, I'm losing it. The Kubernetes, the containerized matrix. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. That's what it was called. So yeah, pretty simple demo. And then for enumeration, so I just have like a whole bunch of enumeration commands here. Let me just copy them down. So I'll exit from this pod, and then I'll just paste a whole whack of Kubernetes, just enumeration commands. So this one will get all the users of the cluster. This one will actually get the clusters. This kubectl auth cani is really, really handy. So if you're looking at like, do I have the rights to do something to a Kubernetes cluster? That's the command auth cani, and then you can just -- list or deploy or create, and it'll tell you if you actually have the rights to do all this stuff. And then this just gets the role, secrets, service accounts, deployments, and then pods. So if I run all this, I get, you know, some results returned. This is just like we're pretending that, you know, we're like a APT threat actor that, you know, landed on this box and we saw, hey, it has kubectl on it, which usually means that it's connected to some kind of Kubernetes cluster. Yeah, APT bacon. Yeah. I guess the other thing that, now that I'm saying this, another kind of like detection avenue here is actually your kubeconfig file. So when you run something like kubectl, you're making API requests to the cluster, and there's authentication involved there somewhere. And that kubeconfig file, I think, like, is pretty important these days to get like auditing around and monitoring around, just like your AWS CLI creds, like your Azure CLI creds, like a browser cookie, all that kind of stuff. So even though that's not, you know, Kubernetes like specific, there's still credentials on your disk that connect that kubectl binary to your Kubernetes cluster that's worth wrapping some auditing around and looking to see, like, you know, is mythic.exe accessing, you know, those keys and things like that. So for the actual detection here, again, this is just the command line we're looking at, but this time we're using like a qualifier query. Shout out to Alex Thierry. I think that was the first time that I read and looked and saw this concept of like a qualifier query, and I've been using it ever since. I don't know if he actually like invented it, but that was the first time I saw it. So basically what this is doing is just looking at different command line arguments, and based on that arguments, it just assigns a score. So this way, if you have like Kubernetes admins and they run, the cani command a lot, but they run these other enumeration commands less, you could like lower the score for each of those or raise the score for each of those depending. So that way you're not, outright like excluding certain things. I feel like this is a really good way for like enumeration type detections. And then if we look at the results, so this is just the, you have like the auth enumeration, the cluster enumeration, and different things like that. So you can add, the score in my case, right, it's arbitrary because I don't have, like live Kubernetes admins, obviously on my little Linux VM here. But yeah, this is just an interesting way to turn the little knob kind of like up and down depending on what you're seeing in your environment. You might have like a script or something that runs like get pods A all the time, so you can just lower the score on that and then raise it for something else. So that's the enumeration part. And again, this is like, we're not looking at Kubernetes telemetry here, right? We're just looking at the actual host layer telemetry. Although for advanced use cases, you can probably craft alerts like the API layer, over a certain amount of API requests per IP or something like that. So there's just a lot of like detection meat here that we're just kind of scratching the surface on. So yeah, and then moving on to the Azure part. So let's hope this works. One sec. So what I'm going to do here is just run a curl command, and I'll make it verbose. And I just set up this little atomic Kubernetes cluster in AKS. There's nothing running in it. So if you're, watching this video and copying this URL down, go nuts. There's nothing on this cluster. But when I run it,
that's like the ultimate honeypot request right there.
Right,
You should have threw something in there, mythic agents or whatnot.
Yeah, I should probably think of it. That's actually, I think I've seen a Kubernetes honeypot floating around. I forget who built it, but I've seen the concept. It's an interesting like use case for Kubernetes, like that whole self-healing aspect, and that you can deploy like different honeypot nodes everywhere. But yeah,
couple blogs.
Yeah,
going back
another like episode. So yeah, you can see the response that we get here, right? The cluster's telling us like, hey, you made a request, but you didn't supply any creds, so we're just gonna deny this request, so it's unauthorized. And then the logs for this is fairly straightforward. These are just from Azure AKS logs. And you could see the URI that I hit, the source IP, and the user agent. And then up here on line 3, that's where we're filtering for like the unauthorized request. So if you do have like a cluster that's hanging out publicly, that's like publicly available that anyone could hit, looking for this kind of stuff is probably worthwhile, just to see who's hitting your cluster. You probably see a whole bunch of like crawlers and bots and stuff like that hitting it, but still, I think worth looking at. Let's see. All right, we still have time, right? I think I got one more.
Yep.
One more demo left. So the last demo is the actual Atomic Red Team pod, and I already have the pod running. So the next step is just to get a shell into it, and then I could actually run like PowerShell. So this is like pretty crazy, right? For 2024, like I'm on a Linux, so I'm on a Windows host, running a Linux VM, and that Linux VM is running a Minikube cluster where I have an Ubuntu, or like a pod deployed, and the pod is running PowerShell. So this is like pretty crazy.
It's like Inception.
Yeah, right. Like pretty wild. So yeah, it's just regular PowerShell, PowerShell 7 here, and then we can actually go ahead and import the Atomic Red Team module here, and then I can't remember if I have kubectl installed. Yeah, I do, because this test here, and I just looked for some atomics that have kubectl in them, or something Kubernetes with them. So this one is for listing the secrets for Kubernetes. So this is just to get the details for it. So we'll go ahead and actually run it, and I'll run it with this attire logger module. And so that's our output. So we can't run it there's no cluster, right, running on this pod. That would be even crazier to have like a Kubernetes in Kubernetes, which I think is actually possible, believe it or not. So basically now when you do an ls, and I think you can just do get content. So what this will do is it'll spit out a JSON file for you that has like all the details of that execution in it. And I've already copied this file to my desktop here. So if I go to VECTR, and I already created an assessment, and then within that assessment, I just created this Kubernetes Purple Teaming. So if you go to assessment action, import log, and you grab that JSON output from the atomic red team test. I know from the last time I tried this for the course, I think there's a bug in this right now where if you have a JSON file that has multiple IPs, so if you're running it on a VM that has like an IPv6 and IPv4 IP, this will crap out. So you just have to edit the JSON file to just remove one of those IPs, but this works really well. So when you submit it, it actually gives you like the log output view, and it even looks like the terminal. Like this is just like so amazingly powerful. And then there's your atomic red team test, and then from here you can kind of set your outcome to whether like whether it actually worked or not. No cluster available or something like that, right? And this has like all your descriptions in it from like the atomic red team repo, the guidance, like what command was actually used to run it, and like the other super cool thing, all the timestamps are pre-populated, so you don't have to go back and like look at your little notepad document to see like when did I run this. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll put the time like in the terminal as well. And so this kind of just saves so much time, and it's just such a neater way of doing it. And I think somewhere in here, there's also, where is the actual like terminal output is somewhere here too. Yeah, logs, here we go. And this is the actual like the output from the command. So everything you need to actually like track your purple team activities is all here. This is like super powerful. And then you can even add like different evidence files and do all the awesome stuff that VECTR does.
So rad.
Yeah,
such a cool platform.
Yeah,
I definitely miss the attire piece in Invoke. I think I'm going to use that always from now on with VECTR. That's really cool.
Yeah, we use it for my in the course. There's instructions for how to set up Kubernetes Goat, and when we set up VECTR, we set up the attire module. And yeah, this is what the I'll give a little preview. This is what the poison pod lesson actually looks like. So what we do is we like look at the desktop, right, and we look at this Ubuntu pod, and then we actually add a little command to the pod definition to just like, like I'm not like a hacker by any means. I know this is like a very
it's not enough obfuscation.
Yeah, right. Like
there's the who am I?
Yeah, there's no who am I here. Yeah. So we just literally just like YOLO download the Mythic payload. I think we're using Poseidon here. And then when we deploy the pod, well, we actually get a callback in Mythic, like from the pod, so not the host.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty
Shell
sweet.
who am I right there.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's in the pod, not even in the host. So that's the cool part.
That's so
here.
cool.
Yeah. And then we go through like how to actually like detect this stuff and look for it and all that. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if I'm forgetting something, but that's it for the demos anyway.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a lot of content. Yeah, that's slick. I'm really digging the VECTR integration with the Invoke.
When I first saw that attire module work, like when I saw Carrie's video, I was like, oh man, like this is like, how come people aren't, paying more attention to this, and then yeah, when I tried it myself and saw it actually work, it's pretty crazy. And if you think about like how much automation, because VECTR has like an API, right? So if you're into dev automation kind of stuff, you can build a pretty impressive Purple Team workflow with like Kubernetes, Atomic Red Team, VECTR, and all that stuff. So yeah,
Awesome.
Kubernetes. There we go.
Yes. Kubernetes lives on.
We're now experts. We're going to go detect all the threats and find the APTs.
Yep.
Let's go.
That's
Yeah. The goal again is just to get like, at least at this point, you know that I need to go here for this telemetry, and if I'm not seeing a pod being created at the API level, I know what's missing, kind of thing. I think that's from at least like a detection standpoint from like a blue team standpoint. That's always been my approach to Kubernetes. I know there's like, you can go really, really deep with this, right? There's Kubernetes experts out there that look at like the actual like vulnerabilities in Kubernetes and things like that. This is not that. This is just like the detection part of it, the actual.
And you're selling yourself extremely short, because you're also sharing how to deploy Mythic with your Kubernetes cluster. Like, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I don't know if you could probably so things that are deployed in like a Docker Compose paradigm, like Mythic, I think those are pretty easily, like quote unquote easily convertible to Kubernetes. So it's probably not too much of a stretch to actually deploy Mythic in Kubernetes, but definitely beyond my skill set. Yeah.
That's super cool.
Great stuff.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thank you.
No,
Yes.
Thank you. As the slide even says.
It's very congratulatory.
That's right.
Purple trees and all.
I love it. That's awesome.
And floating trees. That is great. Yeah, thank you so much, Anton. That's
Thank you guys
this
for
is
having me.
definitely
Appreciate it.
this is definitely an episode for a repeat. At least signing up for the course to to get like the quick version of getting into this and poisoning pods.
Poisoning pods, yeah.
Yes. Poisoning
It's just an
pod.
interesting like the way like the attack vector itself might not be realistic, but the telemetry portions are the things that are interesting to me. So you're seeing like who edited the file, like how it got deployed. You're seeing the telemetry from the pod. That's the kind of stuff that like gets my juices flowing more so than the actual, like the cool hack part of it is cool too. But the different layers of telemetry and how you can like piece those together to figure out like what the heck happened to this pod. Like, why am I getting C2 callbacks from inside my Kubernetes cluster, that kind of thing. That's interesting.
The agent being deployed, and the C2 piece. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
If a breach occurs, but there's no logs to prove it, did the breach actually occur?
It's a tough one. I don't know. I think it did, right? Like it happened. Yeah.
I mean, the tree still fell in the forest.
Yeah. The tree's still there. Yeah.
The bear still did its thing.
Yeah.
C2 showdown. All right. We got to jump into this real quick because
Final four.
There's been some interesting upsets. Let's go.
I'm still kind of like shocked Caldera made it where it made
everybody
it.
can see this, yeah?
Yep. This is the back end.
Right. This is the back end. This is what we're seeing live. So Final Four.
Sliver.
Merlin versus Sliver. So far, Sliver's got a small lead. We got Mythic versus Havoc. Wow.
Dang.
I did not see that coming.
I think Mythic is gonna it's so powerful and like the documentation, the support, the way
honestly,
it all works is crazy.
My initial final two, or like the championship, was Havoc versus Sliver, but now I'm thinking it's a Mythic versus Sliver.
Yep.
This is gonna be wild. Let's see. There are a couple interesting ones from a few previous versions. Havoc just absolutely destroyed. I don't know how Puppy made it this far, but then again, I don't know what Hars is or Goda, so
people were like, look at the votes. They're like, I don't know. I'm just gonna click one.
I mean, Mythic versus Fudge C2.
Yeah, destroyed.
I haven't even heard
Sliver
of
versus
half of
Dymos.
those. Fudge C2? Wow.
Just Sliver destroyed Empire on that one. Not even a close call.
Yeah.
This
Merlin's
one
pretty cool with the Golang.
Oh yeah, Merlin and Implant. Did you see that? Yeah,
that was a tight one.
Very close game.
Yeah.
That was good.
I've yet to try Havoc.
I'm just so surprised on this one.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I know. It's not, I mean, the popularity contest of it kind of like went fast. Everyone was like open source.
Yeah. I guess like relative to something like Mythic, there's probably less people using like Nighthawk and the paid ones, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. We got what? Hold on. I'll share the.
I think we have until Monday, right? Or Sunday? Sunday night? Monday morning?
This is what, semifinals?
Yeah.
Voting ends April 1st at 12 a.m. So you got, is that 3 days?
Okay, so Monday.
Monday at midnight it ends. And then we go into the finals, which will last 3 days. And
So
then on
Thursday.
April 5th.
Okay.
Yep. Friday, April 5th, we'll announce the winner.
Okay.
But there
Hear
we
that,
go.
Justin? I'm pretty sure Justin's listening.
We're going to crown the champion of the 2024 C2 Bake Off. EDR is next. I'm excited for this one.
That's going to be spicy.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to get a list. Is there even 32 EDRs? Like, is this going to even be possible to, to do?
There's more.
I'm going to have to like pull in like CB response versus CBC cloud. Like, I'm going to have to like really pull strings on this one to try and find enough. But
It's funny.
We'll find it.
we'll go. Yeah, we'll be fine.
We can make some
Go
up.
votes.
It'd be interesting if Sysmon is like moves up the ranks real quick.
Honestly, it takes Sysmon over some of these paid ones at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Love me
For sure.
some Sysmon, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Falco, Sysmon.
Oh, does that I guess we should.
Throw some.
That's a
open
good question for
questions.
later. How do we group it? Are we grouping all EDRs, including like pure Linux plays, like the CWP aspect, or should we do it where it's like a universal? Or should we focus on a particular OS, like pure Windows play?
No. We should throw them all in.
Throw them all in. I don't even think it's gonna be a fair head off.
It's fair. Let the
I mean,
people
basketball's
vote.
basketball, right? Like it's regardless of
Yeah,
what
there's-
division you play in.
There's
EDRs
underdogs. Yeah.
All right, figure it out.
If anyone could do it, I think it's this group. So I believe in you guys.
Thanks, Anton.
Really have some interesting. I'm actually excited to see what the voting turnout is for that one, because that one's going to be.
Yeah.
People seem to be pretty passionate about their EDRs, so yeah, it's going to be a brawl.
Should we do a firewall one too?
VPNs, web apps.
Could we go down? Dude, basically, just pull up Gartner at this point and just pick a quadrant and just start going to town.
Throw 'em in there.
Honestly, like, why not once a month just run a bake off and be like, look, why are you looking at Gartner and paying money for this? We have a free popularity one for you right now.
You guys have to be careful. Gartner will buy you out.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's got a price on their soul. I don't care what anybody says. Like, we all have that price.
Oh, of course.
Here it's $3.50 in a case of water.
This is our.
This is it. We wrapped March Purple Madness.
Yeah, that was here.
Yeah.
For the end. Wow.
It's crazy.
So, thank you. What an
Thank
honor.
you, Anton.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
thanks for
Thank you.
Anton and everybody else coming on. It's been a fun
Thanks.
one.
Thank you. Yeah, I always enjoy this podcast.
Thanks. We'll try to keep the content flowing.
OSTs, they're coming in hot.
Yeah. That's the spicy
Guess
one.
it's time to remove that image.
No, it's never. It's always relevant. It's never irrelevant in any capacity. But let's What's next? Armando,
what's
right?
next is this one.
Career
this
day?
is Atomics on a Friday Career Day. It's already set up on the YouTube channel if you want to subscribe and like ahead of time. I think it's like April 12th, a Friday or something.
2 weeks out from today.
Yeah. Wow, crazy. Time's gonna fly.
Back on the normal grind.
Yep. So we'll do this one, and then I think in 2 weeks after that we'll do Ben.
Impede?
Yeah, Ben with Impede. I'll get that booked up.
Excellent.
And then just kind of makes me want to do an episode on Kubernetes, like get into the nitty gritties of it, and like I don't know, do some more atomic testing on that. I think that'd be pretty slick, especially because Anton, you lit the fire, so I think it'd be cool to keep riding it, throw some more gasoline in there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's up for the month following April. I don't even know what month it is.
A break.
This feels like March. It always feels like March.
Just the end of March.
Yeah.
Recess.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm stoked for the C2 stuff because I'm really curious what's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll find. Well, we got to make it through to Monday.
Yeah, we got a long weekend here of voting.
I'm gonna guess Mythic. That's my.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Mythic and Sliver, and it's gonna be. I feel like it's gonna be just Mythic. I think Mythic.
I think if it was Mythic v Merlin, I feel like it'd be a blowout. If it's Mythic v Sliver, I think it'll be close.
Interesting.
We shall see.
Yeah.
What did the Twitter say? I got someone responded here.
Uh-oh.
Spencer.
It's Friday.
Said,
Hot Take Friday. Let's go.
Hot Take Friday. So Spencer is saying my prediction: Sliver versus Mythic in the final round, with the final winner going to Mythic. So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where it's going to go.
We have to crown a champion. Maybe we can get Cody on.
Hey,
give him a virtual crown.
That's an El Camino hat.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I would watch.
Why not? I mean, is Sliver Bishop Box? I think it is, right?
Yes.
Sliver.
I think so.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't know who to invite for that one.
Same.
But Cody has a name to it. We could like preemptively invite them. Preemptively, like, hey, FYI, y'all are up matched. We're expecting you to be here. So
like the Oscars.
We'll have the red carpet.
We'll have the C2 runner. Like, come on, like, it's gonna be a big deal.
The little statue. That'd be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
It's just an El Camino.
Yeah, it's a little red El Camino sitting on the mail door. That's a great idea.
Wonder how much
big thing.
Price out for an El Camino statue. I'll do some Googling this weekend.
El Camino, awesome. Car toy. There's lots of those. So
that could almost be another episode of the podcast. As you guys,
dude, it's on Amazon.
The statues and red carpets for the C2.
Wait, there's an El Camino statue on Amazon?
Hang on, no, not a statue, but
like just a toy model.
Yep. Oh, it's like a 3x8. That's not bad. It fits in your hand.
Oh, I'm in.
American Amazon is just magic. Every time
you don't get this kind of stuff on Canadian Amazon?
No.
Really?
Just the basics. Every time I Google for something and I see, like, if it's something really obscure, like a weird adapter, like a hose or something like that.
America.
Yeah, it's like American Amazon, and it's like the import fees, and the Canadian Amazons just have like nothing. Yeah. So it's like every time I see the American Amazon, it's just like, whoa.
Just blowing people's minds.
Unfiltered.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Top tier.
I know. I always wonder about the crap. We have a warehouse down the street here, and I always wonder about like just the random stuff sitting on a pallet in there, or like on one of their little automated carousels. Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
You should buy one of those Amazon return crates that I see on YouTube. I
guess some people
just buy like a huge like crate of
That's
Amazon returns.
wild.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then just go through them. Crazy.
We could do unboxing episodes, Paul.
That'd be cool.
I'm into that. Like
Atomic
That's
Friday
pretty cool,
unboxing.
I mean,
I'm surprised.
Thousands on one, but
I know we're $1.20 into this episode. I'm surprised people are holding strong on Twitter right now. Like, y'all are amazing. Like, you're all just like, is it just sitting on in the background and you're just like, this show is great?
you want to know more about Canadian Amazon, I guess.
just start at like an 8 o'clock one night and just see how long we can go.
Oh man.
Just get random people to join up and we'll just talk random topics for like 10 hours.
People would love that. I would love that. I would love to
Man.
participate in that.
Man.
Well, there you go.
How many people can we fit into these StreamYards? Let me do some research on that. Start kicking people in and out. Like people just join the waiting room. We just start adding and removing people at like no random interval. Just
I think it's
Spitfire.
unlimited. I don't think there's a
We could-
capacity.
we could stack this with like 20 people. That would be wild.
Nice.
Oh,
Do some research
okay.
on
You
that.
mean participants on screen? It looks like
Like
12
in
or
StreamYard.
15. Yeah, 12 or 15.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Just start sending invites out to people, add them in, and then just kick them out after some time, and just keep cycling through. Like, then bring them back in like 20 minutes later, and then restart that conversation where we picked off. Like,
Yep.
send it in.
It's a new podcast format. I dig it.
I wonder how long, like 10 different topics. Just keep round robining it. Like, you have no idea what's coming next.
I was gonna say like that's a good 1 year episode, but we totally missed our 1 year because we weren't paying attention.
It's been a year already. Wow.
Yeah.
No, we're on like year 2 now.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, this is a
when
year and a
all
half.
started. Oof, time is just Time keeps on
November?
slipping.
Yeah. It was November.
November.
We totally strolled right by.
Wow.
That's fine. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a
We can do it
bonanza
again.
for. We'll pretend that it's 1 year.
Yeah.
And the first year didn't count except for March Madness.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the biggest things. We had no idea what we were doing.
I mean, I still don't, but it's all right.
I know. We just show up.
That's what makes it entertaining.
It's kind of the free flowing vibe of it.
Mhm.
Not a lot of production effort. I think it's the key.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that actually like half serious. I think that is like for the videos for the course, for example. Like if I misspeak or something like that, I just leave it in there because I think otherwise it just feels like AI-ish. You know what I mean? Like a very robotic kind of polished. Like I want it to be more like, yeah, we're hanging out. You know, like yeah, I make a mistake here and there, the kind of thing. It just keeps it more like, even when I listen back to it, it's more interesting. So I think there's something to be said for that kind of, I don't know, what's that, improv style, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Typically, if it's just Paul and I, we'll have the slides ready the morning of, like maybe
By
an
morning
hour.
of, I mean about like 10 minutes before, sometimes in the middle of it, like,
Yeah.
just whatever flows.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we're going to do this topic in 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks comes up and it's like, oh crap.
We have it ready that morning.
Yeah.
It's just atomic test. Like we could talk about atomic test.
Funny.
We know
I'm like
tests,
the
we know
opposite.
data. Like,
Yeah. If I have something
What more
to
do
do
you
on like
need?
the Friday, I need to start it on like the Monday and have it ready by the Wednesday. Otherwise, I hate last minute stuff. But I'm weird like that.
oh yeah, like a doctor's appointment. I'll show up like 30 minutes and sit in my car before going in.
Yeah. I'm one of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
3 hours early.
Gives me anxiety thinking about being late.
Yeah, I hate being late.
Yeah, it does suck.
I blame my childhood for that. It was drilled in. It's better to be a half hour early than 1 minute late. I feel like that did me in.
Yeah.
Like thinking, oh, it's going to take 20 minutes to get there, but I'm leaving 40 minutes early. Like,
Yeah.
we got to leave now. Like, we got to get out the
You
door.
never
Like,
know,
why are we?
traffic, blown fire hydrant. You never know.
That's what I mean. Because then, like, all of a sudden, you're like, oh, it took 15 minutes, and now I sit in the parking lot for 25. It's like, all right. But then that one time you do hit traffic and you show up like 3 minutes before, and I'm like sweating just thinking about walking in like 3 minutes early.
Yeah, I'd rather just chill for 15 minutes than like be stressed out 50 minutes before kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know.
Awesome. All right, y'all. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks.
Catch you all soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Thanks
again.
for everybody who came out for Purple Madness and joined us, shared their knowledge, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks for Career Day.
That's awesome that you guys are doing that. That's a good one.
Catch you all soon.
See ya. Bye, everyone.